friends and patriots, welcome and good evening to you. My name is Ajuri Ngelale, and I come to you from the nation's capital. This is Eagle Eye. On this edition of the program, we take you into a sector which could not be more central to the national economy: oil and gas. At a time of high global oil pricing, Nigeria's struggle against the vigorous and economically crippling activities of oil thieves in the creeks of the Niger Delta is now at a pivotal make or break stage. We are granted all access on site in the dangerous creeks of the Niger Delta region by the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Timipre Marlin Silva, on this edition of Eagle Eye. Without further ado, let's head to what was once known as a garden city, Port Harcourt, the River State capital. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Irabor, is welcomed to Port Harcourt by the NNPC Group Managing Director, Mele Kyari. The soot-filled breeze reminds all of the urgent nature of this visit. At a private meeting with the CDS and oil company executives, the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources bears his mind.
This is clearly a law enforcement issue. It's not an operational issue. So you cannot really blame it on the oil companies. They are oil company operators, they know how to produce oil. But it is the responsibility of the country and the government to keep the security for them to be able to operate. So that is our responsibility. So if the failure is more on the law enforcement side, then it is more on our side. And right now it is affecting so many things. It's affecting the cost of production. It's affecting the volume of production itself. So we can do that for this as a government and as a people. Thank you for coming together. And let us just go there and set a timeline within which this problem should end. And then we shouldn't be talking about it because it's very, very shameful for us as a country. And I'm sure it's even more shameful for you as a military to be discussing this issue of security back and forth as if it's a ping-pong game. So I really think that we should try and get this is the opportunity we have to get on it and make sure that we are able to do it finally.
The Joint Task Force Operation Delta.
This is followed by a briefing by the Joint Task Force operating in the zone.
Covers 10 states of the Federation with 12 security agencies under the operation.
En route to the location, the NNPC Group Managing Director spots irregular activity. The convoy intercepts a broad daylight bunkering operation in real time.
That was because the people were arrested. So what I'm saying is, we're saying this is that we have to identify who is behind this and ensure that we are able to get him. Then that will be the ultimate solution. Well, the day we are not here for a few days, he will just come back. And then, yes, exactly.
Our own direct action that we are seeing. Anytime you see
The area commander walks the team through the aborted bunkering operation.
We take them away, then we hold it. Then the shell team comes and clamp the area where they they remove the IC. Yes, sir. Where they start the pipeline. That's from the right of way. That's when we see when we go ahead. When we go back, when we go to the right of way, we see it. But this one is supply line to the refinery.
To the
Cooking point.
Where you call it?
Yes. It's in front, sir. Inability to evacuate the product, just destroy the ground, so that they don't have to use.
This crude, this crude. Yeah, this crude. Yeah,
This crude.
this is the crude that they take from the pipeline. They dump it here first, and it's from there they start cooking.
After assessing illicit crude storage squares, the team sees a boiler under heavy pressure as oil thieves ran from the site before shutting off the feed line.
They're just digging this fresh now.
This is the fresh one.
They are digging the new one.
Yes, sir. Earlier today.
Maybe very early in the morning before the troops came.
Under pressure.
Under pressure. No, before the troops have been here since around 7. So before the troops came,
That's why they'll come back.
No, we are approaching the...
They are usually very senior people, I must say. They are usually very senior people in the society. But we must arrest them because we can't allow this kind of criminality to fight. You can see exactly what is happening to the environment. These people bring the crude into this place, cook it, and then they also now dispose of the sludge in the environment. You can see what's happening to our environment. We cannot allow this to happen. We cannot allow this to continue. Something has to be done. Apart from the toll it's taking on the oil industry, the toll that it is also taking on our environment, the environment that is to sustain our people is too much. Government cannot bear it. So this problem must be brought to an end.
To fly over the creeks of River State is to witness multiple pockets of open criminality. Assured of local political protection, brazen thieves operate in a climate of impunity as illegal crude storage squares dot the landscape. Now returning to the nation's capital, the team comprehensively understands the full dimension of the challenge to be surmounted. Your Excellency, it's no longer a secret that economic saboteurs and oil bunkerers operating in the creeks of the Niger Delta are now threatening the national economy. We know that the issue of crude oil theft is a major concern to the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari. What exactly can you inform Nigerians about with regard to how government is dealing with this issue of crude oil theft?
Yeah, thank you very much. This actually, I will say, is a metamorphosis of a crime. Initially, it all started with the militancy. You know that there were agitations in the Niger Delta. People took to the forest and, of course, took to sabotaging government pipelines and kidnapping. In 2003, the government now offered an amnesty to them, and they all came back and were integrated. Now, why I said it's a metamorphosis of that problem is that now we brought that problem from the forest to the cities. And we already from then knew that there will be other problems that will come from there. And since then, a lot of them have been trained by the amnesty program. And a lot of them, some of them, instead of really taking gainful employment, have resorted to going back again to another form of crime in the same sector. And as you know, this is not a creation of the Buhari administration. Crude oil theft has been with us for a long time now, but no administration has really dealt with it because some people even sympathized, in quote, with these people and said, look, this is how they can take advantage of the resource in their area. I mean, state governments, we had some pronouncements, even sometimes at the federal level. I mean, in previous administration, people tended to sympathize with this activity. Since then, the activity has only grown. At this point, it is no longer sustainable. It has gotten to a point where it is no longer sustainable. We are losing a lot of our production. So the Buhari administration has taken this on as something. Buhari has actually decided that this will be one of the legacies he will leave behind.
Your Excellency, it's become public knowledge over the years, particularly from, say, 2000 to 2009, when the amnesty program really took off, that there was a kind of semi-open collaboration between some of these saboteurs and even certain government institutions, particularly the Nigerian Navy at that time had been fingered as having some bad eggs amongst them who were actively collaborating with oil thieves. Is there any move on the part of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration to deal internally with any agent of the federal government who may be involved in any type of conspiracy against the Nigerian state with regard to this issue?
You're very correct. I mean, definitely there are collaborators. But, you know, even during the militancy, we had this issue. We had this issue of collaborators within the military. And so the government could not really enforce the law effectively because of the activities of these collaborators. And if you have something, a crime that has gone on for this long, and with a JTF in place, with the Joint Task Force in place to actually exterminate the same crime, and the crime has even gone worse, then you know that definitely the JTF or whatever, I mean, whoever is in charge there is probably not doing their job. But at this time, the federal government has really given a note of warning, and there will be other layers on top of those who are actually operating to actually monitor, because the problem is you send people to take care of this crime, and if you just leave them on their own, then in many cases they become part of the crime itself.
Your Excellency, on the part of investors in the oil and gas sector, we heard recently from a pretty big name in the sector. Mr. Tony Elumelu came out on Twitter and made a very strong accusation that up to 90% plus of oil production in the country, he alleged, was being stolen. There is an issue of accuracy of data. What exactly is the situation? How much are we producing?
I saw that tweet from Tony, but I would say that Tony doesn't have the overview of the whole industry. He's pumping his production into one particular pipeline, the TMP line, and that is actually one of the majorly impacted pipelines. There are other pipelines that are not as impacted as the TMP. So he was speaking from his own perspective. He's not in a position to speak for the industry. So if he said he lost 90% of his production, I understand, which is a very small production compared to the national production. But it is not really, that figure doesn't apply to the whole country. I cannot really say exactly how much, because the figure is not constant. You know, I mean, this is a criminal activity, right. So the figure is not constant. Today it can be up to 200,000 barrels. I can say that, I mean, as a figure, but it goes a little bit higher than that, and it goes less than that.
Your Excellency, Nigerians have asked the question, and you hear this a lot in the public analysis, that for the larger part of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, we've been seeing oil production in and around 2 million barrels per day, 2.2 million barrels per day or so, particularly after the initial set of hiccups that were able to be resolved by the administration. The question they asked is, why is it that since the pandemic we had seen such a gross reduction in the rate of production, and then of course factoring in the OPEC quota, and then not even meeting the OPEC quota? What would you tell Nigerians in this regard?
It's a sad thing for me to discuss, but it's a combination of so many things. It's not just one factor that was responsible for that. As you rightly said, I mean, before the pandemic, we were doing about 2 million barrels around. I mean, definitely we are meeting up to our OPEC quota. The discussion then was how to reduce our production to be within the quota. That was the discussion. But why I said it's a combination of many things. You know, the oil of today is the investment of yesterday. For a long time, there has not been new investments in this sector because a lot of people took a sit down and look approach because of the PIB, the delay in the passage of the PIB. People were not sure what the fiscals, what the legal framework will be after the passage of the law. So a lot of oil companies watched. They were not doing new investment. And it caught up with us at this time. So now there's a PIA, but we have to get the effect of the lack of investment of the past. You know, so these are some of the issues that we normally will have.
In addition to perhaps the lack of investment in recent years catching up with us, as you've noted, are there any core, aside from sabotage, vandalism, are there any core infrastructural issues as to why we're not able to get the production we seek, aside from the issues that are known?
Then the other issue was also the OPEC quota. We had to cut our production, but it's not a mathematical cut. So if OPEC asks you, for example, to reduce up to 200,000 barrels per day, it's not going to be mathematical. You cannot say, okay, shut down, and you cut down 200,000. In trying to cut down, for example, 200,000 barrels, you might shut down up to 300,000 barrels because the production is not really mathematical, like as I said. So now you had this cutback because of OPEC quota, and we had to. There was a lot of pressure on us to cut back, because as you know, during the pandemic, there was a big crisis. There was a big glut. Nobody could sell the oil. The oil actually, yes, exactly. The prices went down to very dismal levels, so we had to cut. So now, after cutting, to bring back the production has not been very easy. You know, when you cut down, you shut down the production. Sure. You have to bring back the pressure for you to be able to pump again. These are all technical issues that now came into the mix.
Before we move on, I'm sure Nigerians are very curious to know, given the infrastructural component of the challenge you've mentioned, which is turning the taps back on, as it were, what is the kind of realistic time frame around when we can inch back to the 1.7 to 2 million range in terms of production?
No, we're already in the process of inching back. I mean, a few months ago, we went down as much as 1.2 million barrels per day. Today, according to the data as I have, we're around 1.4. We are not exactly where we were before. So we are inching back. Sure, but it's a gradual process. I mean, we'll continue to have more productions back until we're able to hit the target. Yeah. So I'm sure that by the end of this year, we would have seen a lot of improvement.
What do you say to some public analysts out there who have been making claims that the issue of crude oil theft has to do with a larger move on the part of some leaders in the oil-rich Niger Delta region to effectively form an alternative economy? The idea that this is a new form, if you will, of resource control, and that there's a political conspiracy of political leadership in the region supporting these activities in the creeks. What is your response to that based on your intelligence?
You know, people always have conspiracy theories. I mean, this is one of those conspiracy theories. I don't think it's that kind of activity. It's purely a criminal activity. And that's why I say, look, we must involve the communities. And I say, look, we should not just go and destroy the facilities. We should target the arrest of key participants, individuals that are involved, so that we get to the bottom of it. Well, I don't know this dimension that you're introducing, but if this dimension exists, then we must dig down, drill deep down, and arrest everybody involved.
Those who would not have immunity.
Exactly. Of course, I know that some political, some misguided politicians, I would say, will say things like, oh, look, because they want cheap popularity. Oh, this is our heritage. Let our people at least get involved and take advantage of our heritage. But I say, look, it's very misplaced. And sometimes some people equate it with artisanal mining in the north. And I say these are two different activities. Artisanal mining is a situation where people go with shovels and headpans and dig for their gold. And they find their gold. So this is gold that they dug for and they found. And they sell this gold. So if you are talking about artisanal crude oil production, then go with your shovel, go with your buckets, dig for this oil, and find it. And if you find it in your well, then it's yours. But if somebody else has invested and found the oil and produced it, and invested billions to produce that oil, and you go and take it from there, it's not the same thing. So there's a whole world of difference between artisanal mining and this activity. This is a criminal activity of stealing the production of somebody who has invested his money. So this cannot be encouraged. So we are saying, if we want investments in this area, if we want to even encourage people to come to invest in this area, you must stop this thing.
Of course, you're very familiar with the fact that one of the major cultural issues bedeviling our region now is this widespread fixation on wealth without work. The idea of non-productive wealth, easy money, which of course fuels many of the things that we've been talking about around crude oil theft. How do you think the political leadership in the region can inculcate and institute a new thinking, a new orientation around productivity and earned wealth in the Niger Delta?
That has been a problem. And there are people who introduce this this very negative belief. I would call it negative belief, that you can sit at home and earn more money than even people who are working. And of course, the human being basically is an indolent animal, more or less. I mean, he prefers, if he can sit down and earn without working, he will always prefer that than to work. So somehow people just bought that very dangerous idea, hook, line, and sinker. Some of us fought it, but we were not successful, obviously. But I think that already there is a convergence of opinion, because it's not sustainable. Suddenly, the Rottweilers that you reared are now beginning to attack you. So now the elite are now saying, look, this is not what we wanted. Because you encourage these young men to say, stay at home, don't work, don't worry, you have enough oil wealth to take care of you forever. And then the guys believed you. And they stayed back, and they're not getting everything you promised. So now they're now coming back to kidnap you, kidnap your children, and so on. So I think at this point, the elite in the Niger Delta are all now also coming together to say, look, this is not sustainable. It's the same thing with the suit issue in Port Harcourt. Initially, the state government was not very interested in resolving the issue, because we tried to approach them, but of course, at every point in time, they rebuffed us. They say, oh, look, this is their way of also getting access to their wealth.
Very unfortunate.
Unfortunate, but today, the chicken has come home to roost. Everybody now knows that this problem is a problem that will kill all of us. So all hands are coming together to fight the problem. And the same thing, I mean, now everybody in the Niger Delta, especially the elites, have now come to terms with the fact that these young men, if not put rightly, will become the death of all of us. So I think at this moment we should now begin to go out there and begin to talk to them. Because it's a big problem in the Niger Delta, the entitlement mentality, which was propagated actively by a section of the elite. The entitlement mentality now overtook them.
The armament.
Yes, exactly. So now we have to go back again and try to see how we can purge them of some of those ideas and get them to work. But for me, the starting point is also to bring investments, to bring work to them. So that they, if you say, okay, please, okay, leave this thing you're doing, then what else are they going to do? So now if we can create the job, that alternative, then we can now steer them towards that alternative.
Share your thoughts and constructive comments with us on the Eagle Eye Facebook and Instagram page. As always, I have enjoyed this time with you, and I thank you for your viewership. I look forward to your company as I host you once again next week at this same time on this network. Until next time, may God Almighty go with you, and as eagles, may we all soar and lift our nation high as we do.